There is a computer running tonight that has already chosen a date in 2026, a single month it keeps circling as the moment the next great break arrives. And this isn't a hunch or a hot take. The same machine printed out October 1987, weeks before Wall Street's worst day ever detonated, then marked the peak of Japan's bubble, then the 1998 shock almost nobody saw. It has been right from years away, over and over. Now it's pointing straight at us, and it's counting down. The machine is called Socrates, and it doesn't do opinions. Its builder was a self-taught forecaster named Martin Armstrong. Socrates doesn't watch the news. It doesn't care who's president. It never panics. It scans centuries of market data wars, bubbles, banking collapses, hunting for one thing: rhythm. Armstrong was convinced money moves in waves, that fear and greed repeat on a schedule you can actually time, not roughly, precisely, and the whole system rests on a single number that has nothing to do with economics at all. That number is pi, 3.141. Armstrong took it, multiplied by 1,000, and got 3,141 days, almost exactly 8.6 years. He called it the economic confidence model. Every 8.6 years, he claimed, confidence peaks and then cracks. Stack 6 of those waves, and you get a longer cycle of 51.6 years. A circle constant, steering the stock market. It sounds insane, but then the dates started landing. And they landed hard. The 1987 crash, the top of Japan's stock bubble. A currency shock in 1998 that blindsided almost everyone else. Armstrong wasn't reading tea leaves. He was handing clients dates years in advance and watching them come true. His firm, Princeton Economics, ended up advising on billions. Central bankers took his calls. And that's exactly when the trouble started. Because a private machine that can time the collapse of markets isn't just impressive. To some very powerful people, it's a threat. Here's what I want you to sit with. In 1999, agents didn't just arrest Martin Armstrong, they went after the computer. They wanted the model itself. A government storming an office not only for a man, but for a formula. To understand why a piece of software scared people that much, you have to go back to where it came from, to a kid who fell in love with the one thing that survives every empire that ever inflated itself to death: gold. Martin Armstrong grew up outside Philadelphia. No economics degree, no Wall Street pedigree. As a teenager, he worked in a coin shop, and something about it rewired his brain. Every coin in that case was a fossil of a dead economy. Rome, Byzantium, empires that inflated, borrowed, overspent, and died. Same story, again and again, across 2,000 years. Booms, panics, collapse, repeat. Most people look at history and see chaos. Armstrong started to suspect it was actually a clock. So he started counting. He pulled records of financial panics going back centuries and measured the gaps between them. And a strange spacing kept showing up: clusters of trouble separated by roughly 8.5 years. Not perfect, but far too regular to shrug off. He sharpened it until it snapped onto that pi number, 8.6 years down to the day. Once you see a pattern like that, you can't unsee it. The only question left: could it actually predict or just describe the past? To test it, he needed more than a notebook. He built a computer program and fed it everything: commodity prices, interest rates, wars, capital flows across hundreds of years. He named it Socrates, after the philosopher who insisted he knew nothing. The machine didn't offer theories, it output dates. Turning points, moments when the crowd's confidence would flip. Armstrong's bet was radical. Markets aren't really driven by fundamentals at all, but by human emotion, and emotion, unlike an earnings report, runs on a cycle. By the 1980s, that bet was paying off. Princeton Economics grew into a global advisory read by institutions and governments. Armstrong wasn't a cable news pundit tossing out guesses. He was mailing clients specific calendar dates and being right often enough that the smart money kept coming back. When your product is literally "here is the day the market turns," word travels fast. Fund managers, foreign banks, sovereign players, all of them wanted to know what the machine was saying. But it gets stranger. The more Armstrong's dates came true, the bigger a problem he became. If one independent man with a computer can time markets better than the entire establishment, what does that say about the establishment? He was too accurate to ignore, too independent to control, and nothing on Earth proves a forecast like a crash you saw coming from years away. So let's look at the calls that turned a coin shop kid into the most feared forecaster on Wall Street. October 1987. Armstrong's model had flagged a major turning point for that autumn well ahead of time. Then it happened, Black Monday, the Dow shedding almost 23% in a single day, the biggest one-day percentage drop in its history. He didn't say sometime soon. The model pointed at that exact window, and the window detonated. People who dismiss him still have to explain that date. For a forecaster, there is no louder microphone in the world than being right while everyone else is on fire. Then, Japan. In the late 80s, the Nikkei was a rocket. Tokyo real estate so insane that the grounds of the Imperial Palace were said to be worth more than the entire state of California. Everyone assumed it would climb forever. Armstrong's cycle said the party ended right at the turn of the decade. The Nikkei peaked near the end of 1989, then fell into a collapse Japan spent decades crawling out of. Same machine, same math. Another market top called before it ever arrived. 1998. A financial shock tore out of Russia, its government debt defaulting, and the tremors nearly took down a giant American hedge fund and froze global markets. Most Western analysts were staring the other way. Armstrong's July 1998 turning point wasn't. He'd argued the danger from Russia would hit harder than the earlier Asian crisis, and it did. 3 different decades, 3 different continents, one recurring rhythm. This is where people finally stopped laughing at the pi number. But wait until you see what the same model does next. Now, honesty matters here. The mystery only means something if you play it straight. Not every call landed. Armstrong pointed at October 2015 as a great sovereign debt big bang, and the world stubbornly refused to end on schedule. Critics, including academic economists, brushed the whole thing off as dressed-up numerology. Fair enough. But here's the uncomfortable part. A model built on a circle constant has no business being right this often. Skeptics can't fully explain the hits, believers can't explain the misses, and that tension is exactly where this gets dangerous. January 1999. Federal agents stormed Princeton Economics. They accused Armstrong of running a Ponzi scheme. The figures thrown around ran from $700 million into the billions. But watch what they fixated on: the computer, the source code, the model. Armstrong refused to hand over the algorithm, refused to sign off that it was a fraud. So a judge held him in contempt, and he sat in a jail cell for 7 years without ever standing trial. 7 years for a formula. Armstrong has always insisted he was innocent, that a bank was the real culprit, that he was pressured into a plea deal, and that what they truly wanted was Socrates itself. You don't have to believe every word of it. But the 2014 documentary The Forecaster laid his version out to the world, and a lot of people walked away from it deeply unsettled. He was finally released in 2011. And the very first thing he did? He fired the model back up. Which brings us straight to now. Because Socrates is running again, and it's not looking at the past anymore. Armstrong's economic confidence model has been pointing at a window from 2025 into 2027 as the crest of a sovereign debt storm. Governments, not just companies, buckling under the weight of their own borrowing. And inside that window, the machine keeps circling one stretch of 2026 as a major turning point. The moment confidence peaks and begins a long slide down into the middle of 2027. But it gets worse. What does the model say that slide actually looks like? Not a normal recession. Armstrong describes soaring government debt, where interest payments alone push toward $1 trillion a year, stagflation gripping America like a rerun of the 1970s, and pensions coming under genuine threat. His blunt line: the people are going to be storming the parliaments asking for their pensions. Whether or not you buy the cycle, that picture debt, inflation, and public anger is not exactly science fiction in the world we're living in right now. So where does that leave us? On one side, a Cornell economist calling the model glorified numerology and a man carrying a felony conviction whose forecasts don't always hit. On the other, a machine that named 1,987 to the day, called the top in Japan, and saw 1,998 coming when almost no one else did. Both things are true at the same time. And maybe that's exactly why this refuses to die, because certainty would be easier. It's the not knowing that keeps you scrolling back through the dates, checking the math yourself. So here's the date the machine named, the one I promised you at the very start. Armstrong's model marks a peak in 2026, reportedly around the middle of the year, then a year-long plunge running into 2027. That's the circle on the calendar. The same system that flagged Black Monday before it happened is now flagging a turning point roughly 8.6 years past its last one, right on the pi cycle, right on schedule. Whether it detonates like 1,987 or fizzles out like 2015, nobody alive can tell you yet. And that's the strange gift of a machine that thinks in pi. It doesn't ask you to believe in it. It just hands you a date and dares you to remember it. Maybe 2026 comes and goes and we all have a good laugh. Maybe it doesn't. But somewhere, a computer built by a man the government tried to erase is still quietly counting down, completely indifferent to whether you're watching. The clock doesn't care if you believe in it. It only cares that it's right. Thanks for sticking through to the end. Your support means the world. Like, share, subscribe, 3 quick taps.